Do you know that a simple Toyota Corolla that in US will cost you like $20,000, in Singapore will cost you $150,000? That's crazy, man. Welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video, I want to share with you the 5 main reasons why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world. While I share these 5 reasons with you, I will also bring you around Singapore. So let's begin. Southeast Asia is known to be a pretty affordable area of the world. If you think about Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Indonesia, Malaysia, in general, in those areas there is a great quality of life at an affordable price, especially regarding food, rent. The living cost is lower compared to the US, to Europe, to UK, Australia. And that's why so many people love to travel to Southeast Asia, and even people like me decide to relocate actually in Southeast Asia. But there is just one exception, and this exception is Singapore. Singapore has a crazy high cost of living, and for the past 8 years has been announced the most expensive city in the world. Let's see together the 5 main reasons why. When I was planning this trip to Singapore, I started to look up hotels online, especially on Agoda and Booking.com, and I was shocked to see the prices in Singapore. I could not find anything decent for less than $70 per night. And in Southeast Asia, $70 a night, it's a lot of money. In Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and other areas, for $70, you can get a luxurious hotel. But in Singapore, look at the room that I got for $70. So this is where I'm staying. It's called Ibis Budget Hotel Pearl. Let's go inside and let me show you the room. The room is so small. So this is the room, guys. As you can see, it's very small. I'm paying $70 per night. And here we can connect to the first reason why Singapore is so expensive. And the reason is that land is extremely scarce here in Singapore, and the price of houses and condo is crazy. Singapore has a land area of only 733 square kilometers and a total population of 5,450,000 people. The price of houses and condos here in Singapore are crazy, and as a consequence also the hotels are very expensive. Even if you're gonna stay in a hostel, like a capsule hostel, something like very basic, you're gonna pay like $40 or $50. For Singaporean citizens, the government has a special program called HBD that will allow people to own or rent a government house at an affordable price for a 99-year lease. And the government decided to do that, otherwise most of the people in Singapore, they could not afford a house. But if you are a foreigner, you cannot apply for this kind of program, and not only you have to pay like crazy prices for a house or a condo, but the government gives you like an extra tax which makes it pretty much impossible to own a house here. I was watching a video of 2 foreigners living in Singapore, and listen to this.
I had a 100% increase. It was asked of the rent. It's not uncommon, 100% increases, particularly in the last couple of years. Buying is not really an option. If you want to buy a place in Singapore as a foreigner, you know, the stamp duty is just increased to 60% of the purchase price. You can't really buy a flat for less than $2 or $3 million, you know, that you want to live in. 60% of that, if it's $3 million bucks, you add another $2 million on top for stamp duty. That's, no one's doing that, right? That makes no sense. So renting is obligatory.
Crazy, right? And now I start to understand why this city is so expensive. Another major reason why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world is that Singapore has to import food from other countries. Since the land is very valuable in Singapore, it's usually prioritized for higher GDP activities. So for this reason, you will not find a lot of land used for agriculture. In fact, more than 90% of all the food consumed in Singapore is imported. And importing food from abroad comes with an additional cost. And most of the time, Singapore has to accept the prices and the increase also due to inflation from its suppliers and the neighboring countries. Let's not forget that Singapore, it's a city-state. It's considered a country, but it's actually just a city. And as you can see in this map, compared to the other Southeast Asian countries, it's almost non-existent. Just to give you an idea, Malaysia is 459 times bigger than Singapore, and Thailand is 713 times bigger. So it's inevitable that Singapore really needs the neighboring country in order to survive. Another reason why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world is that it's a huge financial hub. So you will find a lot of financial institutions here, a lot of big company. This one right here, you see those big buildings? This is the financial district, and that's where you will find the headquarters of like TikTok, Grab, Shopee, Binance, and so many other huge companies, because the government of Singapore made it very convenient to set up the headquarters and the business here in Singapore, and it became very quickly a huge financial hub here in Asia. Here you will find the biggest banks in the world, some of the biggest investment funds in the world. So there are a lot of money circulating just around this area in Singapore. As a consequence, it attracted a lot of expat, a lot of high net worth individuals, a lot of foreign workers here, and as a result, all these high net worth individuals, of course, they also increased the cost of living here in Singapore, and that's one of the reasons why it became so expensive, and it became the most expensive city in the world. And from this park, we can talk about another reason why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world. And the reason is that buying and owning a car in Singapore is like crazy, it's super expensive. And that's why if you go around Singapore, you will see little to no traffic. It's extremely quiet, very few cars around, very enjoyable walking around the city compared to other main cities in Southeast Asia such as Jakarta, Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh, etc. The traffic management is excellent here. And the reason is because Singapore is a small city, if they allow everybody to own a car, there will be like a lot of traffic around. And that's why the government decided to restrict the ownership of car. It's extremely expensive to own a car in Singapore, and that's why very few people are able to actually buy one. In particular, there is this permit that is called COE, which is very expensive to get, and they have limited numbers, so you have to bid in order to get one of these COE. So you cannot just go to a dealer and buy a car in Singapore. The process is extremely complicated. You have to spend a lot of money, and even like the most simple car will cost a lot of money. For example, the price of a brand new Toyota Corolla Altis in Singapore costs 166,000 Singapore dollar. That's crazy. This is a car that in the US will cost maybe $20,000, $30,000. Here costs $166,000. And in addition to that, you have to pay also for the road tax, the insurance, the service and maintenance, the petrol, the parking. So to buy and own a car in Singapore, you have to be very rich. And that's why the city is so quiet. There is no traffic. And that's why most of the people use public transport. They use the MRT, the bus. So the government followed this strategy on purpose, not to make the city crowded. And the fifth and last reason why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world, it's for a combination of things. So in this point, I will just put them together, and I will mention education, which is extremely expensive, and they have a very high standard of education in Singapore. The education in Singapore is famous to have very high standard, very focused, very competitive, very goal-oriented, but also the tuition is one of the most expensive in the world. Also, the healthcare and the medical insurance is very high in Singapore, because Singapore provides the best of the services in the world. To its citizens, it wants to offer the best quality and the higher standard, but of course all those things, they cost a lot of money. I was watching some videos of foreigners living in Singapore, and especially if you have a family, man, living in Singapore can be very expensive. And that's it, guys. We made it to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed these 5 main reasons why Singapore is the most expensive city in the world. And I also hope that maybe clarify why, if you go to Singapore, it can be so expensive, the hotel can be so expensive, the food, the transportation, the services in general can be pretty expensive. Those are the reasons why. There are many more reasons, but I think those 5 are some of the main causes. Actually, let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Maybe add your experience. If you live in Singapore, share your personal experience, because I'm sure you know much more than me. But also let me know if you've ever been to Singapore, if you have visited Singapore before, if it was expensive for you or not. Share your opinion down below. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.